Welcome to Success Redefined with Dr. Tony Warner. I'm Dr. Tony, mom of 5, psychotherapist, author, and mentor. Here, you're going to find insightful discussions spanning science, psychology, and soul as the personal and professional meet, and we explore the intersection of what really matters. So success can be redefined with connection, healing, and fulfillment in mind. Advocacy for human decency, human safety, healthy human connection has always been important to me. We need to talk about this. I want to talk today about the intersection of politics and advocacy and mental health and what it is to be successful as a species, as a human being during this day and age, because we are a spiritual, socio-emotional species. And we are having some struggles right now. We can see those struggles, especially with how things are playing out politically. And there's, oh my gosh, it feels like this has been going on for a decade now. It just feels like it's been going on for so long. The extremities, the intensity, the rigidity around all of the political outrage and the ways in which it's affecting so many different people's lives in so many different ways. And so we need to talk about this. Advocacy for human decency, human safety, healthy human connection has always been important to me because I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of religion. There was also a lot of casting out of people, a lot of exclusivity and inclusivity as a result of that exclusivity. So I grew up as a pastor's kid, and at an early age, I often experienced just a lot of unfair, I don't want to say just, I did experience a lot of unfair judgment, and I often felt unwelcomed in religious circles, in cultural circles, in a variety of circles that I saw in my day-to-day life because of my mixed race, because of my being overweight, because of who my parents were, X, Y, or Z. There are a variety of reasons why I felt that way. Never really felt like I was on the inside. And so all of those experiences throughout my childhood really helped inform for me the importance of advocacy and wanting to do what I could, what was in my power to help people feel less of that disconnection and that not belonging and that not feeling safe or not feeling wanted that I felt throughout my childhood. Now, of course, we can't eradicate any of those emotional experiences from the earth because we are a socio-emotional species. We are meant to feel the emotional spectrum, but we can help. We can help to increase the feeling of what feels good and to decrease the feeling of what feels bad. And so during the 2016 election, I really started to struggle with advocacy, with how to advocate, with when to advocate, with feeling comfortable to advocate. And I was struggling with advocacy in a very visceral way. My mental health, my parenting, my marriage, my work, my advocacy efforts, like it all just came clashing together. And a lot of it had to do with my own experiences with trauma and things like that. But the political division that was so intense was really activating that trauma trigger for me. And it was pulling up a whole bunch of stuff for me. And I know I'm not the only one. The intensity, the emotional intensity that came with the political division during that 2016 election sparked so much for so many. And then if we fast forward to 2020, when COVID hit, that added another layer. And it just has been so intense for almost a decade now. And the intensity wasn't because there were just disagreements, right? Disagreements are part of human nature. That wasn't the problem, and that isn't the problem. It's about how we disagree. It's about how we treat each other disagree. It's because the disagreement was being handled publicly in such a cruel way. There was such vitriol and hatred that was being spewed and such intensity that was just not curbed at all with folks' reactivity towards other people because they were just being outed as others because they saw things differently. There was also a lot of fear, a lot of it trauma being activated for a lot of people because of what was coming out through this political divide. And so I saw these types of things being plastered all over. It was plastered all over the internet. It was happening at work. I could see it play out at work. I saw it in my own kids' schools. And I'm not going to go into all of those examples right now, but I'm sure you could think of some examples for yourself in ways that you saw it plastered all over your life and the environment that surrounded you during that time and perhaps even right now. And so I back then I was feeling scared. I was feeling scared to say or do the wrong or offensive thing. I was feeling anxious. I was feeling nervous because I feared being attacked. I feared being criticized or outed, dehumanized, or accused of wrongdoing. I didn't want those things to happen. And that really affected my comfort level with advocating, with speaking out about topics that were near and dear to my heart, about things that I really believed in. And that was challenging for me because advocacy is and was important to me, but I was struggling with advocating in a confident, clear, and meaningful way. So my anxiety really spiked. I couldn't engage in meaningful, courageous conversations, which we need to have, right? But I really couldn't do that in an effective way during that time. I did not have the energy for it. I did not have the confidence for it. And so I withdrew in many ways. I needed to take some sort of time out for myself. I needed to figure out inwardly what was happening with me in order to be able to navigate it, to manage it better before I could really re-enter the political discourse in a really meaningful and effective way. But as someone who's an action taker, as folks like you and I who we are goal setters, we're go-getters, we're parents raising generations of children, we're professionals doing meaningful work, we're citizens in this world and in this nation, and we are all connected through source God. We need to know how to advocate, I think. I think we need to know how to advocate, when and in what capacity to advocate. And so if we aren't able to advocate in a meaningful, effective, genuine way, there becomes a challenge, you know? Now, I don't think I was bad or wrong for taking the break that I took. I needed to take that break in order to really tend to myself so that I could show up in advocacy efforts again in the future in a meaningfully powerful way. And I don't think you're bad or wrong if you're ever needing to take a break for yourself, if you're ever needing to take that kind of time out and sort things out for yourself. Because if we aren't caring for ourselves, if we aren't able to ground in ourselves, how can we really show up in a powerful, intentional way for that efforts that we really care about, right? So that's really important. We don't want to make that bad or wrong. We just don't want to completely withdraw from advocacy, not have our voices heard at all, and then stay silent forever. It could be a temporary thing, but we don't want it to be a forever thing. So, how do we meaningfully and effectively advocate without fearfully retreating or forcefully attacking? How do we do that? Because I think we need to all learn how to do that in our own way. I think the way that we do that is going to look a bit different for each of us, but we need to meaningfully and effectively be able to advocate without fearfully retreating or forcefully attacking as the means with which to do so. Because the reality is that we're told to treat politics like it's not personal. Oh, it's politics, not personal. But come on, right? Come on. Let's be real. The reason politics matter is often because of our own personal connection to the topics and the laws at hand, right? It does feel personal. Politics affect our personhood. They just do. We can't get around that. And then that affects our willingness or wantingness to engage or disengage from the political arena based on our own experiences with what's happening there. So when we become emotionally reactive due to fear or due to anger, our brains respond accordingly. You've heard me talk about this on other episodes, and I'll continue to talk about this. When we are emotionally reactive, we're feeling fearful or feeling really angry. The way that our brain is functioning in that moment, the way that our brain is steering us in that moment is going to be different than if our brain was feeling calm, cool, and collected. Our brains go into defensive mode rather than creative thinking mode. Our brains go into focus on the negative and the problem mode rather than focus on the solution and moving forward mode. And so it serves us best to be able to gain awareness of our own mental health, to be aware of what sets us off, what leads us to feel unsafe, what helps us to calm, what connects us to our internal self-confidence. It serves us best to be aware of that. If we are to engage in political discourse and advocacy with true human health and decency in mind. Martin Luther King, who is someone that I deeply admire and who is inspiring to me, he encouraged us to stay vigilant of our own minds and our own emotions before taking action, much like what I'm sharing with you today. He said, we must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence, right? And so when we aren't in that frame of mind where we can be creative, when we can be collaborative, when we can connect and have more of an open mind and open heart, then we are more likely to degenerate, to operate, to act from this place of harm, of defensiveness, of violence, of hate, of dark. Even Proverbs 19:11 reminds us to slow down enough to tap into our own inner wisdom by practicing patience and self-awareness, stating that good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense. Now, that doesn't mean we just condone an offense. That doesn't mean we just let people walk all over us and we become a doormat. That's not what it means. It's encouraging us, reminding us the importance of not solely focusing on the hurt or harm that's coming our way, because our sole focus upon that is actually going to prohibit us from tapping into the inner wisdom and guidance that we need in order to traverse emotionally difficult situations and conversations like those that happen in the political arena. So, how do we advocate effectively without being highly reactive, coming from this place of forcefulness and defensiveness? How do we do that? Well, we've got to start somewhere, right? And so I suggest that we start with asking ourselves some challenging but also basic questions. And not just asking ourselves these questions once or twice, but honestly asking ourselves these questions over and over and over and over and over again. Here are the questions that I'm encouraging us to ask ourselves. Starting with you, starting with me. Me ask myself these questions, and you ask yourself these questions. It's not about taking these questions and throwing them on someone else and trying to make them ask themselves. That's not what it's about. It's us starting with ourselves. Us being willing to start with ourselves and ask ourselves these questions honestly and answer them honestly as well. Here they are. Can I honor my beliefs without needing to condemn others? Can I communicate my beliefs without gaslighting others? Can I practice my beliefs without enacting violence against others or condoning the action of violence against others? Can I share my beliefs without ostracizing others? Can I believe what I believe without making the other out to be the devil? Can I advocate for my beliefs without spewing or condoning hate and vitriol? Am I willing to admit that my beliefs do hold bias? Am I open enough to allow my beliefs to be challenged and changed as new information and experience is presented? And last but not least, am I more focused on proving my beliefs to be the right ones or on meaningful connections that can help me and us evolve, to grow, to heal, and to move forward? Can we ask ourselves those questions? I think we have to. I think at the very least, that is a commitment to effective advocacy right there, is to be willing to ask ourselves those questions and then honestly answer them. Just be real with ourselves about the answers to them. And if we see that there are some challenges there for us, to be willing to explore them, to work on them. I'm not saying that moral outrage has no place. I'm not saying that anger has no place. I'm not saying that there is not true pain that can come up with all of these things that are coming up out of the political divide. I'm not saying that we ignore that and pretend that it's not there and just act like everything's all peachy keen. That's not what I'm saying. Because yes, moral outrage and anger, they do have their place. They can motivate us to take action or to speak up for those whose maybe voices cannot be heard, especially in the political arena. But can there also be a place for more than just action motivated by moral outrage and anger? Can there be room for more? Can there be a place for more? More compassion, more courageous action, more curious conversations, more care and connection as humans. Effective advocacy and meaningful political and social change isn't all about who's right and who's wrong. It's not all about religion. I know that it's widely said that we ought to keep religion and politics separate, and I actually agree with that. Religion is human made, it is not God made. It is a choice that someone can make to believe in or not to believe in, a choice someone can make to follow a religion as far as how they live their lives, or choose not to follow a religion with regard to how they live their lives. And so it makes sense to keep religion and politics separate because choice is freedom. And choosing the religion with which you belong or don't belong to is your choice. I'm not saying that religion has to be the steering force here, because it doesn't. It has nothing to do with religion. It does have to do with the fact that we are all a connected species living on this earth together. And therefore, we need to be able to advocate for decency, human rights, healthy human connection and safety, regardless of what religion we may or may not belong to, regardless of what culture we may or may not have been raised in or connected with. We need to be able to do that. It's not all about X or Y, black or white. It's not all about that. Those are topics that need to be addressed in many situations. But at our core, if we can look at politics in a more basic human need, sacred level, we can maybe at least embrace a truth that there is infinite energy that creates and supports all of our lives, all of our planet, all of our universe, that is much bigger than any one of us, and yet it connects all of us. It makes us a human collective. And so we are all part of this web. We're all part of something larger, bigger, right? We're all imbued with a life force energy that creates and sustains life. I call that source God. You can call that whatever you want, but it holds a truth in it that we are all connected, that we are all here co-creating in this world together, infinitely evolving, right? And so there is something deeper that we can remember, that we can call upon when we are talking about human life, when we are talking about laws that govern the way humans can or can't live, how humans can or can't access basic needs. We're all multifaceted, but our core values, they are intended to permeate throughout all facets of our lives. Our core values, our core selves, that core that connects all of us to more and to each other. It's not meant to be fragmented. It's not meant to be divided into red or blue. If we can remember that, then we can still have our political differences. We can still have our disagreements. We can still have our debates. But we can't forget that there is human connection, human decency, human safety, healthy human relationships that matter most, that we all want to be in support of, that we all want to be contributing to the evolution of. Martin Luther King Jr. reminds us, he says, "Here is the true meaning and value of compassion and nonviolence. When it helps us to see the enemy's point of view, to hear his questions, to know his assessment of ourselves. For from his view, we may indeed see the basic weaknesses of our own condition. And if we are mature, we may learn and grow and profit from the wisdom of the brothers who are called the opposition." Maybe we can all take that idea with us today. Maybe we can all be willing to ask ourselves those questions that I shared with you today. And then as we move forward, amidst the political debate and other political divides that come up along the years, remember to come back to the truth that this isn't about forcing our beliefs or who's right or wrong upon someone else or something else. This is not what it's supposed to be about. But we want it all to be about an advocacy for human decency, human safety, for human rights and life, for healthy human connection. I would be interested to hear what comes up for you around this, because this is a challenge. But I think it's a challenge that each of us needs to individually accept in order for us to collectively accept it. And if we do that, there's so much that can change for the better. Until next time, y'all, I hope you can go out and feel successful as a member of society who advocates for human decency, human rights, healthy, safe human connections. Links related to this episode can be found in the show notes section. Want to submit questions about success, satisfaction, healing, and relationships, health, or work? You can do that free and anonymous at drtonywarner.com, where you'll find other resources there as well. Did you benefit from this episode? You can subscribe, like, and share with another to pass it on, because anyone can listen on the go with this podcast audio available on all major podcasting platforms.